Good evening to everyone who doesn't know it's Paramoga, we can say that outright. And let's get started right away. Look, in Kyiv, the monument to Mikhail Bulgakov was dismantled. And finally, the freedom of the Democrats has prevailed throughout the country. The economy has grown, and people have become happy to live up to 100 or even 150 years. Children don't get sick. In short, everyone is rich and incredibly happy to exist in this country that's open to everyone. And on Andreevsky descent, by the way, it was there and it was dismantled. This decision was made in December 2025. Well, no comment here, to be honest. Commenting on this, as they say, would only make things worse. And there's also some interesting information about Paramoga. Paramoga is the shelling of the Zaporizhzhia thermal power plant, which supplies electricity to the nuclear power plant. As a result of this shelling, which, by the way, was reported by representatives of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, it led to the Zaporizhzhia thermal power plant itself being cut off from power and switching to internal reserves, that is, to diesel generators and other available options. This incident, according to IAEA representatives, raises serious concerns about the only power transmission line left for the ZMPP, which has been disconnected several times in recent weeks. And as a result, emergency diesel generators were activated to provide the electricity needed to cool the 6 reactors and to avoid the threat of a nuclear reaction. We won't go into the question of why a nuclear power plant doesn't supply itself with electricity. It's not exactly complicated, but these are technical details. You can simply remember that it can't provide itself with that cooling without external sources. That is, to build a nuclear power plant, at least the types we have here, you need external power. Right now, we're being told that the power line is working. The personnel at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant are in shelters and the shelling continues. Plus, this power plant is the largest in Europe and among the top 10 most powerful nuclear power plants in the world. It lost power for 20 minutes on June 3rd, which isn't bad since, as I recall, it was out for 2 weeks at the conflict's start during its seizure. And in the end, well, it turned out the way it did. Now, if they keep shelling it, it could last for half a year. Remember, there was a hole in the casing, and there were other problems too. In general, it's attracting some unhealthy attention from the military, so it's a pretty risky situation. But here, besides the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant itself, there are even more dangerous things. And what's even more dangerous is all these commentators who talk about how Ukraine can easily and simply get nuclear weapons. How exactly? Well, Dennis Tylerman, he is a representative of Firepoint, the manufacturer of the 3 most flaming pink ones that fly everywhere and anywhere, striking points on the globe at any place at any time. He says it's easy to get nuclear weapons and that everyone has long known what they are and where they're from. Why are you bothering me? Tylerman says. I'll tell you everything now.
And if Putin thinks that Ukraine is not capable of making nuclear weapons, there's nothing difficult about it.
Well, yeah, just say, give us money, give us nuclear weapons, and Ukraine will have nuclear weapons. It's actually quite difficult to make it because you need specialists, you need centrifuges for enrichment, and it requires a high level of enrichment. And if we're talking about just saying, give us a couple of missiles, well, that's easy. In that case, you could say it's easy to build a house too. Give me a house. Here you go. Well, here you go. I'm a great builder. I built it. Look at this mansion.
Of course, we can do that, but we don't do it because we stick to our international obligations that we've taken on in exchange for our international partners guaranteeing our security. They are not fulfilling their obligations, but we are still fulfilling ours.
Ukraine with a smartphone is just a paradise of democracy, as I said at the very beginning. Now it's just nothing but prosperity here. After they took down the Bulgakov monument, now they're negotiating about nuclear weapons, then about a kilogram of gold for every resident. Then what else can they negotiate about? Maybe free trips to some place like Hawaii. So everything is great in Ukraine. All that's left is to get nuclear weapons, and this good country will become even more powerful and economically advantageous.
You just took my next question right out of my mouth. Can Ukraine become a nuclear power again, and under what conditions?
Well, of course, it's a very simple process and everything is clear there. It's just a matter of a political decision, that's all. And we have to give credit to our leadership for fulfilling the commitments regarding Ukraine's nuclear status. That's all.
The leadership fulfills absolutely all obligations, not just 1 or 2. Zelensky and his cronies fulfill all obligations in the world. And people are free in the country, and the country itself is open to everyone, and once again the economy is thriving. Come on, like I said, all that's left is to bring in nuclear weapons to make this wonderful state even more wonderful. In order to present this wonderful state as an example for Europeans whose lives are hard, who have a tough time living. Europe is always decaying. It's been about 28 years now, maybe even 30. Sybiha, this outstanding representative of Ukraine's diplomatic corps, decided to open a cluster in the accession talks for Ukraine's accession to the European Union. And by the way, there are these kinds of mugs. Right now I have a Rus rank list with the highest capacity. You can drink from it and then you'll be more powerful than ever. The link is right here in the description. Thank you. It will appear as soon as I show this mug. And now let's see what an eyewitness to these events has to say. So it seems that Hungary, represented by Magyar, I'm not sure where the stress goes in his name, but that's not important anymore, has allowed Ukraine to join the European Union. Before this, Orban said it wasn't allowed, but now Magyar says it is. In fact, today I heard that he's saying again that it's not allowed, but anyway, if it is allowed, then Sybiha reacted to the decision to open the first cluster of talks on Ukraine joining the European Union. He thanked the partners and announced a new chapter in relations with Hungary. I thank the representation, the Presidency of Cyprus for its leadership in the process of Ukraine's accession to the EU. But Cyprus is also one of the most powerful countries. I would even say, not just of the Earth, but of our meta-galaxy. That's why Cyprus is always ahead of the rest of the world. Its economy has reached its peak, so Cyprus is trying to help other countries advance as well, so that they can also prosper, so that people there can also live the way they should. To improve the quality and standard of living. It's all clear. He expressed his gratitude to all EU member states, the European Commission, and the institutions of the European Union for their unwavering support. And Budapest was mentioned because we are opening a new chapter in Ukrainian-Hungarian relations. A chapter that is built on mutual respect, trust, and our shared European future. Well, and so that this European future doesn't seem like a mirage, for some reason they decided to change the protection rules for Ukrainians after 2027. Do you remember all those calls from Zelensky to bring back all compatriots, to the digital state? Tell me, what was he talking about with Partagin and Partagino Semerts and with Monsieur Macron and with Starmer? In general, who hasn't he talked to about this? And he kept saying that yes, young people are needed in Ukraine for rebuilding. We will destroy, and they should rebuild. That's how we entertain ourselves, the servants of the people, each keeping things in their own hands. Sometimes what they're holding falls and breaks, but then the rhythm will glue it back together. Whatever nonsense, and we'll go put new things in order. In short, here's what it's about. The European Union is preparing once again to extend temporary protection for Ukrainians. However, the conditions for granting this status may change. Instead of a complete cancellation of protection starting from March 2027, Brussels is leaning toward extending support, but with potential restrictions for men of conscription age. For Ukrainians, this isn't really bad news, but for men, specifically those newly arrived, there's an important nuance. It only applies to them, not all men. Everything is turning out differently than we wanted. Things didn't turn out the way we hoped. A year ago, EU countries hoped Ukrainians would gradually switch to national residence permits. Many did, those who were able or more proactive. Those who are unable to switch, well, obviously these people either don't work or just don't care. Because, well, it was always clear that this refugee status was temporary. That's why I think I even said back in 2022, as soon as this refugee status was introduced, that people need to get a more secure status. You need to learn the language, you need to get some kind of job, gradually, step by step, get residency, a residence permit. And then citizenship, because that's how it works in almost every country. First you get a temporary residence permit, then permanent residency, and then citizenship. Well, whoever made it in time, made it. So now what? The Cypriot presidency of the EU, that's what Sybiha was talking about, has prepared an analytical document that the EU Council will review on June 4th. So apparently they've already reviewed it. Maybe not yet, maybe today. I'll tell you tomorrow if there are any results. Key aspects of this decision include legality and the right to protection. They may also tie it to the legality of leaving Ukraine, which will actually place the responsibility for the decision on Ukrainian legislation. In short, it seems that those who leave or cross the border illegally will not be granted refugee status. For those with status, conditions remain unchanged and no one will be sent home. However, there are rumors that another ministry, besides the Ministry of Internal Affairs, is involved. This is the Ministry of National Unity of Ukraine, and they will create another ministry, with a complicated name as well, but without similar abbreviations. Though, honestly, even without that Chernyshev guy, who is a close associate of Zelensky, and the countries of the European Union realize that such restrictions can lead to accusations of gender discrimination, or provoke a surge in asylum applications from those who refuse to serve in the army. But apparently this worries the European countries a lot. And here Masachuk, a former deputy, if I'm not mistaken, joins the conversation. He talks about the model that is most likely being used by the Ukrainian government now in order to get at least some Ukrainians returned to Ukraine. Because it's clear that a person who has left and experienced, let's say, the European Union or the USA or any country, even God, the Dominican Republic or Haiti, will not return to Ukraine anymore. Simply because Ukraine is like Ukraine on a smartphone surrounded by barbed wire on the western side, and this is not a joke, I've shown more than once that this is really the case.
The Ukrainian authorities have carried out a plan based on the so-called Israeli experience.
Well, this Israeli scenario, he's about to explain it, and I'll briefly summarize it.
At one time, Israel had the same problem. There were no workers, no soldiers. Well, there just weren't any.
But why aren't there any workers? Why aren't there any employees? Laborers, movers, plumbers, drivers, scientists? Why aren't they there? Because those who were taken into the army and those who ran away so they wouldn't be drafted, this is the result of the country's prosperity. Exactly, that's Vinidut.
The factories are at a standstill. The Jews aren't coming. And then they put their plan into action. The plan was very simple. They themselves stirred up a wave of anti-Semitism.
That is, the Israelis themselves. I don't know how true this is. If anyone is familiar with this concept or with the history, write in the comments whether it's true or not. I've never heard about this, but to be fair, I've also never been interested in it. So Masachuk says that at some point in time, I understand this is probably the mid-20th century, maybe the 70s or 80s, that representatives of Israel themselves stimulated waves of anti-Semitism in different countries, because of which citizens and potential immigrants started returning to the Promised Land. And then soldiers, workers, and everyone else started to appear. So he's saying that supposedly Ukraine is doing about the same thing now. The country...
Roughly, Jews lived there en masse, and all these Jews came to Israel. The Ukrainian authorities have roughly the same plan.
Well, basically, he speaks slowly. That's the kind of things he talks about. In order to apparently get more soldiers, Ukraine has started forcibly mobilizing former Ukrainian citizens who are no longer citizens of Ukraine. Deputy Mazarashi recently spoke about an outrageous case. This is the forcible roundup of a German citizen for conscription who flew to Ukraine to visit his parents, and he came with peace of mind. His citizenship was taken away back in 2017. He renounced it. There was a procedure for renunciation back then, and suddenly it turned out that he was still a citizen. You're just like all those little deputies over there. Let those barbershop warriors tell their stories, give their testimonies, acting all scared, saying you don't love Ukraine or you don't like Zelensky. Just give up your passport and leave. Well, you can hand in your passport or throw it away, but you won't lose your citizenship or the official record of it. And it obliges you to follow all these cruel modern requirements of the state, which were introduced relatively recently. What are they saying here? There are documents, by the way. Here from November 25, 2017, it says that a citizen of Germany loses this very citizenship and receives German citizenship. Here is this certificate. Everything is here then. Melnik signed all of this and is now Ukraine's permanent representative to the UN. So it's not some official from the Yanukovych era, like they say, some bureaucrat who... No, all this happened after the Revolution of Dignity. The Migration Service told the Territorial Recruitment Center that the man got a Ukrainian passport in 2013 and is recognized as a citizen of Ukraine. It is noted that the passport application is kept in the archive because he left, and there is no information about the termination of his citizenship. So in the end, what happens to him now? Now he has been found fit by the military draft board and sent to serve in one of the military units. He didn't provide a certificate of renunciation of citizenship. The military enlistment office said their servicemen acted according to the law. Well, it makes you think again that if Ukraine treats citizens of other countries this way, even if they are its former citizens, it could seriously damage relations with those countries. And Mazurashu also spoke directly about this. There has already been an appeal to the German embassy, but for now, this very German, a citizen of Germany, is still at the training center. Well, one can only imagine what kind of pleasures he has to endure there. I've already shown all of this before, but what's happening there is just disgusting. There are ditches, barbed wire, and those poor guys are forced to be there. Basically, everything bad we can imagine is happening there. So, what's next? It's time for journeys. Powerful leaders. And here they are being introduced. Let's choose who will present the powerful leaders today. Well, who do you think? First, we have Tuktukas performing a dance. Tukina is dancing.
Victories, 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 victories.
It didn't work out. Not surprising, really. And here we look at who we have. We have this citizen here. He reminds me of Yozhin Zbajin. There's a song like that, with a certain melody, Yozhin Zbajin. The Poles sang it, and there was a guy like that in it. But this Yozhin Zbajin says that it's unfair when men run away from the country. That's the kind of person he is. Obviously, it's unfair from his point of view. Of course it's unfair.
When people run away from Ukraine, do nothing there, and live off handouts.
And where do they make nothing? Where are they? Well, okay, that's Germany. In any other country, to get money, you have to work. All these collective farmers who came from God knows where, they know nothing about what happens abroad. They still being collective farmers, with all my respect to people working in agriculture, it's just a metaphor. They don't know what it's like in Europe, what people there think. You come here, they give you a suitcase full of money, and you happily run around the streets buying all sorts of Bulgari, Armani, and other luxury accessories. But in reality, that's not the case. In order to settle down properly in Europe, you have to work. Man, you have to work. It's simple. Even the journalist, I think, looks at the screen and thinks, oh God, when will all this end? When will they finally shut down this telemarathon and give me a couple of millions so I can have a good rest after a job well done?
And what about the person who's trying to earn a living, provide for their family, or fight even more? What else?
Like an old man already, I mean, people have gone abroad, and somehow, according to him, they are interfering with Ukrainians who want to provide for their families. Logic isn't new to the old man. Maybe he's an artist. Artists are usually smart. I know a few, and they have no trouble with logic. But what's this? Well, it's all mixed up.
And the fact that our country hasn't paid attention to this for many years, it shows that, well, I don't know, maybe...
If you don't know, don't say anything. If you don't know what's happening, it's better to stay quiet. As a Ukrainian, I think it's better to chew than to say nonsense. I was interested.
And for these people to run away...
And now Grandpa suddenly got worried. Who is it? The most interesting thing is that all sorts of unknown people are popping up. It's one thing if you know some figure, he's an ex-something minister. Well, like Omelian, for example, that high-ranking draft dodger who really is a draft dodger. Or Riva, the former minister of social policy. Well, at least you knew them somehow before, but who is this? So the most obscure characters come out and start pushing their talking points, which are supposed to, influence the minds and thinking of impressionable Ukrainians? But everyone has already grown stronger. There aren't that many people left who believe all this, or even listen to it. Yes, you and I listen, but all those others don't. Because there are also these powerful General Krivonos types with Borislav Bereza, a patriot who is in the Baltic states in Austria. Basically, another draft dodger. And together they're pushing the idea of patriotic education for the youth.
How did you approach the issue of patriotic education among the youth in a systematic way and study this question?
Sitting in the Baltic states, you might say we should start with youth from childhood, even kindergarten, maybe invent a necktie for them. I think it's not far off. We'll hang a portrait of Bandera there, for example, or someone else from the reburials. They reburied Melnik. And we'll raise them like, let's say that we have all these heroes, look at them. And on top of that, from early childhood, they'll say that you have to go to war in order to fight. I remember when I was a child, I used to read Soviet books. And in Ukrainian too, by the way, nobody banned them. There was just a huge pile of them. And everywhere the main idea was world peace, justice, helping your friend, helping your neighbors. Now, as they said correctly in Bratya, I never get tired of repeating this quote that people used to be just people and now look at what they've become. Well, we see all these people, they also went to Soviet schools, read those books where it was all about peace and friendship, and yet they turned out like this. Maybe they weren't like this before, or maybe something changed them. Write your thoughts in the comments about what can change a person and turn them into this.
Thank you for the main question. Thank you. Well, first of all, power is understood this way in this unpathetic language. It's not understood. It's a tax on language attacks. Everyone was given a musket. Everyone was given a stone and sent to the eastern border to fight. They are not engaged in national patriotic evacuation. Not the young ones. They are still preparing.
Everyone gets a musket in their hands, everyone gets a stone, and they are sent to the eastern border to fight. Otherwise, you'll get a patriotic upbringing.
In Ukraine, uncle, the Ministry of Subtitles should be handled by the Ministry of Defense, or rather, the Ministry of Education should be responsible for education, and most importantly, for increasing the amount of knowledge.
Thanks to Alexei Dubrovsky for the subtitles. Let's say intellectual abilities, cognitive abilities, creativity and all that, but definitely not love for weapons. That's what the Ministry of Education does. Now it's clear it's not even the Ministry of Education anymore, you could say, but rather the Ministry of Happiness, so to speak. But nevertheless, the task of the Ministry of Education is education. And that's what they're all about. And for us, it's as if the confidence of people in military service has significantly increased. I've already told Alexei about promoting military service with Dubrovsky. The promotion is ongoing.
What, did you see the subtitles there? And you can buy 68,000 burgers with the salary? That was last summer, I think. And some other nonsense.
And there was some girl there, she was dancing. It was also a very strange public service ad. There's propaganda going on, but that's just pure idiocy in this case. Well, that's how things are. Don't forget that you have the opportunity to get a little closer to this character's power. And the others too, with these mugs, and soon there will also be t-shirts, Alexei Dubrovsky. Subtitles by Alexei Dubrovsky.